Welcome, everyone. My name is David Elwood. I'm the dean here at the Harvard Kennedy School. And it's my very, very special honor to welcome His Excellency Ivo Josipović of Croatia, the President of Croatia. It's also a remarkable testament, I think, to his leadership and to the excitement that on a cold Friday afternoon, we have filled the forum about as full as it gets. So thank you to all of you for being here and joining us. It's a great honor, Your Excellency, to have you here at Harvard. And before I do introduce further our special guest, I do want to thank the Koklis program of Southeastern and Central Europe, the Institute of Politics, and the Luksic Fellowships of Croatia for being co-sponsors of this event, and for so many extraordinary activities here and well beyond. Now, the term Renaissance man, which means someone who crosses so many different fields and is comfortable, is often tossed around loosely. In the modern world, it feels like it's an increasingly rare occurrence where it actually has meaning. But I'm not sure we've ever had someone on this stage who could talk about having 50 original musical compositions and even more scholarly articles all in one person. It is truly remarkable. And indeed, we could just have easily have had a piano up here instead of a podium. Indeed, maybe we should have had both. But what we have before us, a president who has who's done remarkable work in many, many different fields. And whether it's in the field of law or even being the director of the Music Biennale Zagreb, one of the largest popular music festivals, the president has really been at the lead of it. President Josipović was elected president of Croatia in January 2010 with more than 60% of the vote and was inaugurated on February 18th, 2010, so that was almost exactly 1 year ago. He holds several degrees from Zagreb University, including a law degree and both a master's and PhD in criminal procedure. He started his political career in 1980 as a member of what ultimately became the Social Democratic Party, and after actually authoring the first statute of the SDP, he left politics to focus on the dual careers of law and music. As I say, not a common pattern to be a rising star in politics and then move to music and so on. He also holds a degree in composition from Zagreb Music University. He founded the Croatian Law Center. He's taught at the University of Zagreb. He's even been a researcher at universities including the Max Planck Institute, a place called Yale, and represented Croatia before the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. He's an award-winning chamber music composer and the like. So it is indeed quite remarkable that this man also then returned to politics in 2003 as an independent member of parliament. Even more remarkable was that he was nominated to become the president of the party in July of 2009 and ultimately succeeded. He is known for he's like all famous world leaders, very calm and mild-mannered, never getting overly excited, never screaming. And in this regard, it has stood him quite well. But he's also had a remarkable, his calm and thoughtful and very oriented towards justice orientation has stood him well, seemingly in Croatia, but across the world as Croatia moves to becoming much more engaged in NATO and the UN Council of Europe and the EU. His so-called peace tour in April in Bosnia was, of course, highly controversial in his country, and he delivered a quite unprecedented apology for the various of Croatia's wartime activities. Not surprisingly, this created a substantial frustration and anger by some in Croatia. And in the words of the president, I've touched on areas of policy that were before untouchable. I am not afraid of comments about my actions. It's part and parcel of being president. Strong messages provoke strong reactions. And so both in words and deeds, he has been quite an extraordinary leader, indeed quite a Renaissance man. He's worked very hard to normalize relations with neighboring countries, particularly Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, and Slovenia. He's also worked to strengthen ties with non-European nations as well as the European Union, particularly the US, China, India, and countries of Latin America. And he's working hard to ensure the rights of national minorities protected. His framework for new justice also calls for social and legal structure to address deep injustices. And finally, he's been very focused on issues of governance and on corruption. So it is indeed a great honor to welcome a wonderful composer, a remarkable scholar, and a magnificent president, President Ivo Josipović.
Honorable Dean, professors, students, dear friends, I'm really honored to be this afternoon with you. My favorite topic is region, and this is not just by chance. I consider regional politics of Croatia as one of crucial issues for our country. So Croatia is now before EU. Croatia will be very soon member of EU, but that's not enough. Our region policy is part of our efforts to be member of EU. Why? Because good relations with neighbors, namely Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Montenegro, is part of our security, is part of our economical possibilities, and part of human efforts to make good relations between peoples, individuals, and nations in general. 20 years after the war, 15 years after Dayton Agreement, now we have to ask ourselves where we do stand. Are we in the status of frozen conflict, or we have strength to push our countries toward new relations, open relations for friendship, for cooperation, and for common European future? One of the most important things for a regional approach is to be aware that Europe is not complete without all South European countries. If you have the map in your mind, then you will see that without Croatia, without Bosnia and Herzegovina, without Montenegro, without Albania, without Kosovo, without Serbia, the map is not complete. Just few weeks ago, I met German President Wolf, and his message was very clear to me, very clear, because he said, I would like to travel from Berlin to Athens without passport. And that's very important. This is common space defined by common history, by common cultural, by common heritage. So, what is the Croatian policy? Croatia is obviously the first of countries in the region to be member of EU. It's, from one point of view, a good status for Croatia. And for the other, we have to be aware that we have to help our neighbors to make the same. For a reason I was speaking before. Now, all politicians in the region must somehow choose between 3 or 4 dilemmas. We have policy of confidence versus fear of each other. We have partnership versus confrontation. And we have solidarity versus selfishness. I'm quite sure that most important politicians in the region will choose first part of this dichotomy. But the basis for everything is trust. We have to build the trust in the region, and that means that we have to face the history. We have to try to find common history. I'm quite sure that all peoples of all states probably cannot have the same view on the history. We will have differences. That's normal, like the other nations in the Europe. But we have to have the same basis, the same values, and to promote our countries in light of those values. Tomorrow, Croatia, as member of the EU, can serve as a bridge between Eastern European countries and Europe. Croatia must help to those countries to pass this bridge and to enter the Europe. We already started with this policy. I would like to stress that probably symbolic act by our government delivering a translation of acquis to Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia is a good step. Probably it's symbolic, but it's a sign of goodwill. So, what are the main reasons to cooperate? Firstly, security is the first reason. It's always said in our country that it's better to have a good neighbor than big wall. And that's really important. Cooperation between countries can prevent all wars, we can prevent repetition of history. Secondly, economy is very important. Cooperation in different fields for Croatia, it's very important. Cooperation in trade, in tourism, in different kinds of businesses, it's very important. Especially when Croatia enters EU, even now, we can hardly compete German economy or French economy or United States economy. But we can compete, we can be good on regional economical level. Regional market is the space when we can show what we can do, and then even to perform common projects with other countries in the region. Then we have interest to develop cooperation in science, culture, and sport. Also, there are many individual interests because families are divided. We have friends, we have cousins in neighborhood. And one very important thing, we have to fight together against organized crime. Up to now, criminals cooperated much better than states, and now it must be stopped. Now we have quite good relations between our prosecutor offices and between police departments in Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Montenegro, and first results are very visible. Local mafia is now, part of local mafia is now under investigation or even before the courts in Croatia, in Serbia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the process will be not always easy. Unfortunately, hard history has consequences. And there are many obstacles on this way. Firstly, we have psychological obstacle, because after so much blood, after we were enemies for decades, we have to create friendship. And it's not always easy, especially for those people who suffered during the war. But we have to be stronger than bad emotions. But we have to have in our minds that we have difficulties to resolve, especially missing persons. Still, 1,900 persons are missing, Croats and Serbs. Also, part of stolen cultural heritage is not yet given back to Croatia. Then we have problem of war criminals. We have to admit that not only the others performed war crimes. We have war criminals also among us, and we have to have the same criteria to judge war crimes. Then we have very important problem of refugees. We had really many refugees. People from Croatia went to Serbia. People from Bosnia and Herzegovina were expelled from Posavina, it's northern part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to Croatia. People from Vojvodina, that's part of Serbia, was expelled to Croatia. And so all combinations are fulfilled. And now all governments are decisive to enable everyone who is willing to come back to their homes. We have extensive program how to enable people to come, to renew their homes, flats and houses, but unfortunately that's not enough. People cannot live from flats and houses. We have to create jobs as well. Unfortunately, especially in northern Dalmatia, the part of my country from where many Serbs went to Serbia, it's completely destroyed and there is no industry anymore there. So it's not enough to build the houses, we have to be industry, we have to find job for these people. And what's very important, every single person should have access to ownership. All houses, all land, woods, everything must be returned to people who owned it before the war. On the political level, that's policy of all countries. But practically, we have to show that this will be fulfilled. So, the basis for everything is trust building. What was the first step I did after I entered the office? I went to the parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to Sarajevo, and I tried to make objective view on our history of participation of all countries in the war. And obviously that was not the picture acceptable for everyone, even in my country. But I wanted to say the truth. And it was welcomed. There were some forces in politics, around politics, that objected, organized demonstrations, I don't know what. But the pools of public opinion clearly showed that Croatian citizens, citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, even citizens in Serbia, are supporting this type of policy. Fortunately, immediately I found friends and politicians who wanted to participate in this type of program. I have to stress that Serbian President Tadić, from the very first meeting we had in Opatija, everyone was surprised that we met in Opatija. It was somehow our secret. We wanted to prepare our meeting without daily influence of journalists, of politicians, other politicians. And we had a very successful first meeting with good results. I will tell you a little bit about later. And what's very important, I found partners in Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. Yes, there are some differences, even big differences among politicians in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But basically, all my contacts with Bosniak, Serb, and Croat politicians from Bosnia and Herzegovina had the same background. All of us would like to have an area of peace and cooperation. Bosnia and Herzegovina has specific problems because Bosnia and Herzegovina is composed of 3 equal nations, Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs. But the Dayton Agreement that stopped the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the region, unfortunately didn't find appropriate solution for future life, for equal political participation of all peoples in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And structures under the Dayton Agreement and internal laws are very complicated. And now our friends in Bosnia and Herzegovina have to find proper way how to make for all 3 groups equal possibilities to participate in political processes from one side, and from the second side they have to find the proper way how to enable Bosnia and Herzegovina to accept enormous number of rules, so-called acquis European rules, which will be not possible under present organization. They need to build an efficient state. And in spite, they're still composing government after four months after elections. I'm optimist. I had extensive discussions with Bosniaks, Serbs, Croats from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and in spite they haven't built trust yet they're on the good way, and I hope they will find their way to Europe. After, my colleagues and myself, we organized a trip to Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we asked Croats, Bosniaks, and Serbs to visit mass graves of all three nations in Bosnia. And that was the first time that in Ahmići, or in Marino Selo, or in Prijedor, I hope there are some people from South and Eastern Europe here, gathered together all three nations, not only ordinary people, but politicians, religious leaders, and the other. So that was a very good first step, and reaction of people, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but in surrounding countries, was very good. The most important thing to build trust is the same approach to war crimes. Yes, we have ICTY. The ICTY is International Court established in 93 in The Hague. It's international court that is now going to finish its mandate in 2 or 3 years. And in spite quite important criticism against its work, I have to stress that the legacy of the ICTY is, generally speaking, positive. Unfortunately, we can address many criticisms to different decisions or choice of indictees there. But generally speaking, the ICTY introduced some sense of justice. The ICTY introduced and helped the permanent court under Rome Statute, and helped countries in the region to accept very important legal principles and to change our judiciaries. Our judiciary, especially in the field of prosecution of war crimes, now is much better than before. No peace without justice. So we have to fight war crimes, whoever performed it, under the same criteria. Also, the policy of solidarity is very important. It's very important because on our way to Europe, we are facing different challenges. Borders, as example. Croatia had important problem with our friends and neighbors, Slovenia. We have border problems with all countries. If you have the map in your minds, we have problem on the Adriatic Sea with Slovenia, with Bosnia and Herzegovina, and with Montenegro. Not so big, but territory is always a very sensitive issue. We have problem with Serbia on the Danube, and one small problem on the north with Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. It's not easy to make compromise, but I hope that even in part of those cases we are going to negotiate and we are going to find a proper solution. But if not, our relations must be resolved by international justice or some kind of arbitration as agreed with Slovenia. So I consider that our philosophy of solidarity to help the other countries to fulfill requirements to EU is very important, and Croatia will never, I have to stress this, Croatia will never blackmail our neighbors when they will approaching EU by different bilateral problems. So, I was told that 20 minutes is enough. So, it's very important to warn professors that they have 20 minutes because they tend to speak much longer. I'll address just a few words about Croatian position towards EU. Now we have to close 6 more chapters. Chapters mean different areas of life and their adaptation to European norms. The biggest issue are judiciary, because unfortunately, during transition, we partly destroyed our judiciary. It was not brilliant. Just a few years ago, we had, here this number, 2 million of unresolved cases. They were very impressed at law school here in Harvard. Now the situation is much better. We performed many reforms, and now the number of unresolved cases is acceptable. Unfortunately, we have too many long-lasting cases, and we have to increase power of our judiciary and independence to make it able to be very quick, efficient, and capable to resolve the case under high criteria, not only by our legal system, but internationally accepted criteria. The other problem is economy. Economy is a problem because, unfortunately, Croatia not only had socialist type of economy 20 years ago, but our economy was more or less destroyed during the war. Not only by military means, but also by the fact that we didn't adapt our economy to modern technologies and the requirement of modern market. The biggest problem is placed to shipyards. So we have people that knows how to make ships. Our ships are very famous, but the subsidies are against European rules. That means when we cut subsidies, shipyards will be killed, definitely. The only alternative is to find foreign investor. And now our government is trying to resolve the problem of shipyards by announcing possibilities, trying foreign investors. And now there are some good news. We are going to see what will happen, because it's not just economical problem, it's a social problem as well. Many people work in or around shipyards. So that's the biggest problem in our negotiations. And of course, economical problems are also connected to regional policy. Distance between Zagreb and Belgrade is 400 kilometers. You can pass it by train, or you could pass it before the war in 4.5 hours, even less. Now we need about 7 hours, even more. What does it mean? That means that traffic, economy, circulation of goods and money and values is not good enough. We have to change the situation. We have to build infrastructure in whole region, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have plans, in the region, especially Bosnia and Herzegovina, have plans to build a north-south highway in Bosnia and Herzegovina connecting Hungary, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina with the Adriatic coast. We have to build highways and railway infrastructure between Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we have to improve Croatia as important center for trade and transition from east to west. The nearest way from China, India, to Frankfurt, to Berlin, to Budapest, is through Adriatic Sea to harbor Ploče or Rijeka, and then by train. And we have to take this opportunity. We have to find investors. We have to improve Croatia together with neighboring countries, because we can better do it together. We have to improve Croatia and the region as a good market, as a good place for making business. So, at the very end, I would like to stress that we in region must build a trust. We have to trust each other. We have common interests, common issues. And those people who are afraid that myself or President Tadic or presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina are trying to build new Yugoslavia, they're completely wrong. We have our countries. No one is thinking about new Yugoslavia, but we are thinking about European Croatia, European Serbia, European Montenegro, European Bosnia and Herzegovina, Macedonia, Kosovo, and the other. So, finally, I'm optimist. I'm always optimist. If not, I will never enter the office. I believe in strength of Croatian people. I believe in goodwill of our neighbors. I believe in European future of Southeastern Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And indeed, if you tell a professor to speak for 20 minutes, you can usually count on 40. So this was indeed quite remarkable achievement. We now have time to take questions from the audience. There are microphones located here, right up over here, another one here, and one here. And let me just remind you what a good question at the Kennedy School involves. First of all, we ask that you identify yourself. Second, it is short and contains just one thought. And finally, it ends with a question mark. And so with that, let me start right over here. We'll take this question right here.
Thank you, Mr. President, for visiting us here. I'm John Soylu. I'm a freshman from Turkey at college. You talked about the European integration and the peace in the Balkans in general. How does Kosovo figure in those plans, and how do you think that will affect this process?
You know that Kosovo is a newborn country. Previously it was part of Yugoslavia and then later part of Serbia. Now it's an independent country recognized by many countries, not all. There is problem with Serbia. Serbia is not recognizing Kosovo, and this area is very shaky. Croatia recognized Kosovo, and in the same time, which looks very hard task, we are building good relations with Serbia. Our policy is that friendship towards one country is not burden on friendship with the other country. So up to now we are balancing, I think, quite good. We would like to be friends with Kosovo, we would like to be friends with Serbia. Yes, obviously Kosovo will have a European future as well. That is not near future, definitely. Not because European Union, after recognizing, not all countries of EU recognize Kosovo, that's not only problem of recognition, but it's problem of high standards. European Union has higher and higher standards. Now Croatia is facing much higher standards than Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, or Poland several years ago. Because European Union is a society, club, with strict rules, and those rules are more demanding than before. So Croatia needed 10 years, some other countries a little bit less, but this period is at least 10 or 15 years is needed for new membership. Thank you.
Next question is right up here.
Mr. President, good evening. My name is Pietro Rabassi. I'm an MPA candidate here at the Kennedy School. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your words in this occasion and previously of apology and recognition of the past, which is a major force in the region for stabilization. And being half Greek and half Italian, I know how hard it was back 15 years ago. So thank you very much for that. And my question relates about the future, concerns the future of Croatia in economic terms. Once you join the EU, have you made any plans on how to make Croatia strong economically in the region vis-à-vis the neighbors and the whole EU? You've spoken about the shipping industry, but you may also know that there are competitors in the EU, such as Italy, Greece, and others. And you've spoken about also transition of goods coming from the Far East to the other countries in the EU. So are those only the sectors that you are targeting, or some others are as well? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, different countries develop different priorities. So mentioning tourism or agriculture or shipyards, I would not like to forget the other areas. But if we rethink in which area Croatia can be the best champion, or one of the best, definitely it's tourism, it's agriculture, it's probably ecology, and different type of cooperation in different industrial areas, high technologies and something like this. There is also one unpopular industry, it's military industry. We had some results in the past, especially Croatians are champions in demining. And this is one of very important areas. Unfortunately, humanity is keeping to perform wars all around the world. And this type of industry is also very important. Thank you.
Right over here.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. President, for the fantastic address. My name is David Saxton. I'm a freshman at the college. My parents recently took a trip to Croatia. It was a tourism trip, and they had an amazing time. And I was kind of wondering how you felt the future of the tourism industry in Croatia might be, how you think it might develop in the next few years, and how you think you might make Croatia a more attractive tourist destination.
Thank you very much. Experience of your parents, I think, gives answer. That's the area we can be champions. The problem in Croatian tourism is that our touristical season in most of Adriatic areas lasts just for 2 months. So we have to develop different activities, different possibilities for tourists, and to make our season longer. That's very important. Then we have to invest more, obviously. We have very high, very good investments and very good hotels and the other resorts in Dubrovnik area and in Istria. But we have problem in mid-Adriatic because of the war. Some hotels are destroyed during the war. Some were destroyed by economical reasons because during the war we didn't have tourists there. And now we have to find investors. Just in a month and a half, at the beginning of April, there will be investors conference organized by United States, and I'm a sponsor of it. And this will be a regional conference with participation of hundreds of American investors. And that's a good opportunity to offer even tourism as possible field of investments for not only Americans, that will be for Americans, but for the other as well. So I'm very optimistic concerning tourism because probably your parents will tell you our sea is crystal blue. It's clean. And my wife is not listening. We have beautiful girls. And boys as well.
Mr. President, let me take the privilege, since as a moderator, to ask you a question somewhat unrelated to Croatia, but certainly very much in the news. We've seen remarkable events in Tunisia and Egypt and so forth. In some ways, they do harken back to almost a generation ago when Eastern Europe went through really quite dramatic transitions. And I guess I'd be interested in your thoughts more generally, but in specifics, as these nations try and build a new democratic existence and so forth, are there lessons from the experience in Croatia or Eastern Europe more broadly that they might learn from and skip some of the more painful steps that so often nations have to go through?
The most important message from not only Croatian story, but let's say, call it now Yugoslav story, is avoid the war. The war is the worst thing you can have. So any violence, wars, riots, and everything, including blood, violence, violation of human rights, is the worst choice. That's the worst choice. Situation in Croatia was a little bit different. We had peaceful democratic transition from so-called communism to democratic organization of the state and political life, but we had external input by aggression, and that was our main problem. Then, from this, we somehow heritage also economical problems, severe economical problems. For African countries, you mentioned, the most important thing is to avoid extremism of all kinds. The most important thing is to build immediately democratic structures, to have the government elected with confidence of citizens. That's the most important. And I hope they will gain this goal.
Very good.
Thank you.
Right over here.
Hi, my name is Ana Bulic, and I'm MPP student here at Kennedy School and also Lukšić Fellow. Thank you, Mr. President, again for being here today. So I have one question regarding education, considering that you're an academia member as well. So if we consider that 80% of our citizens end up on the same educational level as their parents, what our country should do to increase that, basically what our country should do to raise educational level of those children who come from low-income families. Thank you.
Strategically, education is recognized as one of the most important issues in Croatia. But unfortunately, this is an example how proclamations are not followed by practice, how it can be recognized. Unfortunately, the budget for higher education, for research, is cut. And that's bad news for everyone in Croatia. Yes, we have economical problems. Everything can be cut, everything but not education. And that was my message to the parliament and to the government, but unfortunately they had different calculator and different priorities. Yes, educational system in Croatia is not perfect. In spite we have excellent professors, brilliant students, I see some of them here. We have good results at mute courts, even being better than Harvard in some cases, I have to be honest. But generally speaking, we have insufficient system, and we have to face with this fact. It's very important for Croatia to have international support, and we are very grateful to your university and the other American universities, different organizations like Lukšić organization supporting Croatian students to study abroad, to study in the United States, in Western Europe. We had special agreement with European countries, special agreement to exchange not only students but professors as well. We have common projects, especially with Austria, Germany, Italy, but mostly Austria and Germany. And now we are trying to include our educational system in common space of education and science in Europe. It's not always easy because you need money for this. We accepted a general system of education based on Bologna process. Not always happy with all outcomes, but now it's definitely that Croatian legal system can be compared with the European system, also with American, and we are proud of all students and professors participating in different European and American universities.
Right up here. Right up here.
Okay.
Mr. President, first of all, thank you for your speech. It was definitely insightful. My name is Atanas Grozdev. I'm a graduate student in sociology from Bulgaria. And having traveled in the Balkans, I completely agree with you that Croatian girls are beautiful. Absolutely. But my question is about a specific cross-border civil society initiative, which actually has been supported by more than 950, I think, NGOs in Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that's namely the Regional Commission for Establishing the Facts about War Crimes on the territory of former Yugoslavia, whose goal is to respect and recognize all victims. This project has been supported by the European Commission, by the European Parliament, by the Council of Europe, but of course it would not be sustainable and effective until it's fully and completely supported by the politically supported by the governments of all these countries. And my question is, what are the specific steps to support it that you envision and that you stand behind? Thank you.
You're speaking about the RECOM
Yes,
initiative,
exactly.
yes. The RECOM is organized by my friends from Croatia and from Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina and the other countries. They visited me in my office 2 or 3 months ago. I participated in one of their conferences, and before I became politician, I was NGO member, one of those NGOs involved in the initiative. So, what is specific of this RECOM initiative? There were different experiences all around the world. This type of commission started in South Africa, and it was very successful there. During and after the war in our region, the reaction to war crimes were primarily judiciary. That means we had international justice, we have national legal system, and what I would like to stress, now we have very good cooperation in prosecuting of war crimes between prosecutor of Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia and Montenegro. They have special agreements. Yes, RECOM friends are right telling that victims are not always observed properly. Victims are also undermined before the ICTY. There is no decision by ICTY granting anything to victims, in spite of the norm in the statute. Having in mind victims, I'm completely supporting RECOM. But there is one part of the initiative that is not realistic. In one part of the project, they are trying to capture somehow part of state competences, forcible, and that cannot be granted to NGOs. My advice to friends from RECOM was to rethink the project, to keep the project, but to abandon those authorities that can be granted in organized states, and in the region all states are organized, that can be granted just to the judiciary or police. They cannot replace police and the court.
Right up here.
Hi, I'm Lauren Chaliff. I'm also a freshman at the college, and I'd also like to thank you for coming here today. My question is, what do you think is the current state of religious tension in Croatia and the Balkans, and what evidence do we have that it's improving, that it's been improving over the last couple decades?
I didn't catch it.
What is the state of religious?
Concerning Croatia, Croatia constitutionally is pronounced as a state of religion freedoms. Dominantly, Croatia is a Catholic country. About 90% of citizens are declared as Catholics. But in Croatia we have Muslims, we have Orthodox, we have even Buddhists. We had more than 100 religious communities in Croatia, not always in the same position. There was one dispute concerning position of several small Protestant communities because the government refused to sign contract with them as with the other communities, but it's now resolved. I hope now it's going on. In my point of view, the status of religion freedoms is very high, very good. No one is preventing to practice his religion. And even in Catholic country, like Croatia, with 90% of Catholic, they elected president who is agnostic. That's me. That means Croatia is tolerant country. No fundamentalism, Catholic or the other. And now I expect our religion communities to participate more in reconciliation. That's very important, especially when the refugees are coming, most of them Orthodox, in areas when Catholics are dominating. I think the role of religious leader is very important, and I'm always trying to motivate. I have good relation with church, with different church, with different religion communities in Croatia, with all of them, really with all of them, and I'm always trying to motivate them to promote friendship, to promote tolerance among different religious societies.
Yeah, right here.
Jacques Rupnik from the Center for European Studies. Mr. President, you've outlined the European prospect of Croatia, yet at the very same time, the opinion polls from Croatia seem to suggest that a majority of public opinion seems skeptical about those prospects and have doubts about the wisdom of joining the EU. How do you explain this situation, and what can be done about this premature Euroscepticism in Croatia?
Okay. Firstly, all political parties, all important political parties, parliamentarian parties are supporting EU membership of Croatia. At the very beginning of our EU trip, we had more than 80% of support. Now it's thin majority, caused primarily, that's my opinion, because the process is lasting too long. It's some kind of resistance. You are diminishing our nation, you're diminishing our state by prolonging so long our way to Europe, and we are European culture, we are part of Europe and so on. That is the logic of ordinary people. But I'm fully convinced after proper action by government and the other political parties, opposition, that joined in this effort. This is the only question when government and opposition are on the same line. The majority is unquestionable. And I'm very sure that referendum, we have to have referendum to join EU, will be very convincing.
Afraid we only have time for 2 more questions. I see both of you were here first, so I'll go here, and my apologies to you. Here we go.
Thank you. President, firstly, thank you for coming here to speak with us. My name is Ibrahim Khan. I'm a freshman at the college from Pakistan. My question pertains to Croatia's bilateral relationship with Turkey. And since both countries are close to EU membership, how do you see that relationship evolving in the near future? More focus on an economic side, more focus on a political side. How do you see that evolving?
So Turkey is a very good friend of Croatia. At the very beginning of our statehood, we had good support, excellent support from Turkey. Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize Croatia. And relations between Turkey and Croatia are really excellent. I met several times President Gül. We always had good discussion. Also, both countries are engaged to help Bosnia and Herzegovina to resolve present problems. And in that sense, our cooperation is also very good. We have very good economical relations with Turkey. And I have to stress that even Turkey is also touristical destination, much bigger than Croatia. We have more and more tourists from Turkey as well, and more Croats goes to Turkey to see the beautiful monuments of Muslim culture and religion. Our future, your question was probably focused to European future of both countries. Definitely Croatia will be a member of EU. There are some disputes in EU about Turkish membership, connected with different conditions, but probably partly it's fear of very big country, very important country. Does it belong to the same culture, to the same political orientation? But I have to tell you my opinion. I think Turkey will be member of EU in future. Turkey belongs to EU, and I will be very happy to see your beautiful country as a member. Croatian way to EU was very long and painful, but in one period of our negotiations, we were very pessimistic, and there is one joke about it. That was question, where will Croatia be member of EU? And the answer was under Turkish presidency.
Last question.
Thank you for your address, Mr. President. My name is Danielle Rabinowitz. I'm also a freshman at the college, but I am, in addition, pursuing a composition degree at New England Conservatory. My question is slightly outside the scope of anything political, but I was wondering how you managed to balance both your, your political career and your career as a composer, and in addition, how you're committed to enriching the arts in Croatia.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very unsuccessful. That means that I don't have any time to compose. And this was one of my first unfulfilled promises from the campaign, because I was preaching that when I entered office I will continue to compose, and I even promised that I will write opera, John Lennon, dedicated not only to Lennon, but his killer, Chapman, who is a very interesting person psychologically. That's a good scenario for opera. But unfortunately, I have a single minute for composing. So when I will be retired, I go back to my composing ambitions. But I consider culture as important tool to perform my duties. And I had quite a lot cultural events, especially concert, that's my field, helping me to present Croatia as part of Europe, as country with rich culture, as country that can offer not only beautiful sea, not only good sportsmen, like basketball, handball, football, swimming, skiing, and the other, we have many champions, but also great cultural events. So if you come to Croatia, visit our museums, attend one of concert of Zagreb Philharmonic Orchestra or Zagreb Soloists, and try to avoid my compositions because it can be stressy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, I wanted to give you a chance to offer any last thoughts, but also in the audience are a fair number of people, you've heard a number of them, who would aspire to making a difference for their country or their world, would like to be leaders perhaps in your image or in others. And I wonder whether you have any words of advice or wisdom for them as they move forward with their lives and careers.
Thank you very much. So that was a great occasion for me to give you some thoughts, to speak with you, to tell you how I consider politics, Croatian, our European future. Of course, you are coming from different countries, from different cultures, from different political regimes, from different societies. But I think that all humanity, nevertheless, if you live in Croatia, Russia, United States, Pakistan, Japan, Australia, I think that we share basic common values. And it's very important to recognize these basic values and never forget them. During the war in Croatia, most of people had in their minds main values. And that is the reason we can reconciliate now. Those values are the same in north, east, west, south. And the most important thing is to be human being, to believe in moral basis of humanity, and to follow your heart. Not to be corrupted by power, by money, by different perspectives of different posts. And if you want to be politician, if you want to be high politician, highly placed politician, I think that you have to have in your mind always that you should be not occupying the office, not just this. You must be leader. You must have vision, and you must follow the vision. And then people will say, yes, he's a good politician, he's going to make something, and even those people who are not supporting you will estimate you. And that's important. Many people, many politicians of goodwill failed. Different circumstances, different economical situation, political surrounding, but all of them who followed moral laws, who followed goodwill, who was always capable to give the hand, to understand the other, they're remembered as good politicians. And I hope you are young enough to share idealistic approach to politics. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you very much for those inspiring and thoughtful words. We are now adjourned, and I wish you all a safe evening and a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.